Welcome back everyone. Hikaru Nakamura and MVL are all tied up in their battle for the first place in the Grand Chess Tour. Things are still undecided after playing 2 classical games, 2 rapid games, and 3 Blitz games, as every single one of those games was drawn between the two. This game that I'm about to show you is their 4th Blitz game. Hikaru had white in this game, MVL with black, and Hikaru decides to go for the reti opening, which gives both sides lots of flexibility on how they choose to play the opening. So here MVL opts for c5, Nakamura plays c4, transposing to the English. Knight f6 here, knight c3, and d5. C takes d5, knight takes d5, e3 from Nakamura, so getting ready to develop the light square bishop. And black has many options in this position. For example, he can go knight c6, but here MVL decides to take on c3. And then MVL plays g6, going for bishop g7. Bishop b5 check played. MVL blocks with bishop d7. So here Nakamura decides to retreat the bishop all the way back to e2. And this move has similar ideas to the Bogo Indian defense, where black would retreat the bishop to e7 after playing bishop b5 check. So here basically Hikaru is trying to justify this waste of tempo by arguing that the bishop on d7 is somewhat misplaced. So MVL continues on with his development and both sides castled. And d4, that gains more space in the center. MVL played bishop to c6, putting the bishop on a more active diagonal, and also protecting b7. So this could come in handy if white decides to go rook to b1. So here Nakamura plays bishop to a3, attacking c5, also putting some pressure on e7. So black took on d4 and played rook e8, unpinning the pawn. Rook c1 from Nakamura, developing the rook. Queen a5, attacking the bishop, so queen b3, developing and defending. Knight d7, and here bishop b4 from Nakamura, attacking the queen and asking black the question, where is the queen going to go? So here MVL played queen to f5. So perhaps he could have tried queen to a4 here. So this was perhaps safer than what MVL played in the game, because after the move queen to f5, this queen is now stuck over on the king side and black has to be quite cautious here. So bishop d3 played right away from Nakamura, attacking the queen, so the queen goes to h5. Note that if black tries bishop to e4, here white has to move knight to h4, trying to kick the queen off the defense of the bishop. And if queen g4, maintaining control of the bishop, then here f3 attacks queen and bishop. So if queen takes h4, here f takes e4, or even bishop takes e4. But I prefer this slightly because this also opens up the file for the rook. And white is much better in this position because he has 2 bishops, very nice center, also an open f file. So here after bishop d3, queen h5 played, and Nakamura played e4. White grabs more space in the center, and there is also the immediate threat of going d5, which would win the bishop. Therefore MVL played e6, stopping that. So h3 from Nakamura, taking away more squares from the queen. And now the only available square for black's queen is h6, as white controls the entire 5th rank. Also g4 square, and h4 is controlled by the knight. So rook a to d8 played, rook f to e1, and a5 from MVL, trying to push white back a little bit. It's hard to suggest a move here for white. For example, if he plays knight f6, this seems natural, pressuring e4. This runs into rook c5. So the queen has to drop back, queen h6, but here bishop d2, this wins the queen. So a5 here, bishop back to d2, a4, queen back to b1. And now in this position, the black queen has no squares because now the bishop controls h6. So MVL could have considered playing the move here, bishop h6, to eliminate the dark square bishop. So at least now this queen is safe. But here after queen to b1, MVL perhaps a little bit too calmly plays rook to c8. Now bishop e2 from Nakamura lining up with the queen. MVL played bishop to f6, so hoping to run away after knight g5, queen h6, and the queen can escape. Note that because the bishop on d2 is undefended, white doesn't have good discoveries with the knight. So he can play knight takes f7, and after queen takes d2, knight d6, forking the rooks. But this isn't so good for white because black has two pieces for the rook. He can play something like queen takes d4 here, and after knight takes. So here black is definitely better. There are some possibilities of rook coming to the f file, and black would have nice pressure on f2. Also bishop h5. So here after bishop f6, rook c to d1 played by Nakamura. And this is a good move, just defending the bishop. So reinforcing this threat of knight g5, and this is more deadly now. Rook e to d8 played by MVL. There's nothing much that he can do here. So now Nakamura plays knight to g5, queen to h4, not wanting to step into this diagonal of the bishop immediately, so queen to h4. And now the sequence that follows is quite beautiful. g3 from Nakamura. Note that the knight defends h3, so queen takes isn't possible. So queen h6 is the only square for the queen. Now knight takes f7, opening up a discovery on the queen. And this is possible now because the rook defends the bishop. And the knight also forks queen and rook. So here queen takes h3 played. So Nakamura could just grab the rook and be up and exchange. But here he played bishop f1, bishop back to e2, so they repeat moves. And now a very nasty move from Nakamura to finish off the game. Bishop g4. In fact, in this position, MVL resigned the game. So the point is that black's queen is now trapped on h3. So if he decides to take the bishop, queen takes g4, then here knight to h6 check, forks the king and the queen. Knight takes g4, and white wins the queen for just a minor piece. So with this decisive victory, Nakamura wins the 2018 Grand Chess Tour. And of course a very nice prize fund of $120,000 US. So that is all for this video. Thanks for watching and have a great day.